Hello and welcome to FS Brew. FS Brew is the region's first podcast focusing on all things insurance and Insurtech in the UAE and the broader Middle East. I'm Ranjit Philip. I work with a boutique consulting firm where I work on M&A, funding, and go-to-market support for startups and tech companies.
Hi, I'm Vidya. I'm the founder of Forward, a startup that works with insurance companies to build their go-to-market digital propositions. In today's episode, we have with us Rob Schimek. He's the Group Chief Executive Officer of BoltTech. It is the fastest growing international insurtech, and he's responsible for the company's development and growth around the world. Prior to starting BoltTech, he has held several leadership roles with AIG, FWD, Deloitte, and holds an MBA from Wharton School of Business.
Yeah, and a bit about BoltTech as well. It operates in over 35 markets globally. It's one of the largest insurtechs in the world, offering embedded insurance and facilitating connections between insurers, distributors, and customers. Presence in Asia, Europe, and all 50 US states. BoltTech quotes about 55 billion annualized premiums. That's a very big company indeed.
It
So we hope
is.
you enjoy listening to this episode. Hi, Rob. Welcome to FS Brew. We are delighted to have you here with us. So, for those of you who don't know, Rob Schimek is the Group CEO of BoltTech, a unicorn that is in US and in Asia and pretty much a number of other countries, 30, 35 plus. Rob will correct me if I'm wrong. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Thank you, Ranjit. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to this.
Perfect. So this is a question we ask all our guests. Why insurance? How did you get into insurance as a career?
Ranjit, I have to give probably the most common answer that you hear, which is it was completely by accident. I didn't set out in my life to become an insurance guy, but I will say this. I found insurance to be super challenging, extremely interesting, extremely relevant to society, and to having a true purpose in life that's meaningful. And so that's really attracting my attention. But also, I seem to have found myself working for companies that have been a really interesting strategic puzzle, and I just love that.
Perfect. Very good.
Awesome. And tell us a little more about BoltTech itself, Rob. Can you explain what does an insurance enabler like BoltTech does?
Yeah, video. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use maybe two sentences to say the way I would describe BoltTech, and then I'll unpack that a little bit and try to provide a little bit of clarity. So I like to say that BoltTech is a high growth international insurtech, as Ranjit said a little bit ago, serving millions of customers across 35 markets on 4 continents. And what we're trying to do is accelerate the access to high quality insurance products. In my second sentence, even though that was two already, in my third sentence, I'll say that we focus on providing tailored and affordable insurance products to consumers through our distribution partners, platforms, and networks. And if I unpacked that a little bit, it says some really important things. Number one, that we're really focused on access to insurance for people who really need it and can't get it. So we focus on trying to make that tailored and affordable, and we're working on accelerated access. That's comment number one. The second thing is that we do this in a really big scale, 35 markets. But to give you also a sense, we deal with over 700 distribution partners around the world and over 250 different insurance carriers providing product that we're able to give access to customers with. The third kind of unpacking element I'll say there is we said something very simple, that we serve consumers through distribution partners. So we are a B2C player, and we're focused on getting our capabilities in the hands of the consumer who needs that protection. And we do that not one consumer at a time on a direct to consumer basis, but we do that in a very distributed way through distribution partners. Now, you said a very important word, one of the most important words with it, which is this word enabler. We do not consider ourselves to be the great disruptor of the insurance industry. In fact, we try to position ourselves exactly to the opposite of that. We consider ourselves to be a great enabler to the insurance industry, and we are enabling our insurance carrier partners who are part of our ecosystem to provide their products to distribution channels that they might not ever otherwise get access to. If we're working with a telco, as an example, a insurance carrier might not have access to provide their product through that telco, but we do. And so we enable that connection to happen. Just like we enable our distribution partner, in this example, a telco, a cell phone service provider, we enable them to get access to providing protection products that their customers really need. For example, protecting their cell phone.
Mhm.
And that's really important to their customers. It's also a revenue stream for these distribution partners. So they're serving a very important need for their consumer base, and they're generating their own revenue. And we are enabling our insurance partners to be able to provide the product that fulfills these needs. But if we tried to do all of those things ourselves, we would fail. And
Mm.
so we consider ourselves to be the technology, the glue that makes all of this fit together and work. And so therefore we try to really strongly position ourselves as an enabler to the industry.
Perfect.
Which is
Very good.
okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
good to see that you're attacking it from multiple points of view, and that enabler word is so important. Now,
yeah.
just going back to the founding story, I read that this was set up in 2020, if I'm not wrong, and what a time that was of change and tumult and disruption. So we'd love to know a little bit about the story behind the setup and how did it evolve? How was it started?
Indeed, it is factually true that BoltTech was in fact launched during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so you're right to call that out and almost for us all to get a chuckle out of it. If you really want to challenge, try launching a brand new business during the middle of the global pandemic. It was quite a interesting time. But we are a digital native company, so all of our tech is really homegrown tech. And by being a digital native, it was really interesting because the COVID situation created the need for you to be able to transact without always coming into contact with another human being.
Mm.
And so it is true that the pandemic accelerated the pace of acceptance of this digital transaction space. And that was quite fortunate for us. Don't get me wrong, not everything about being associated with COVID was fortunate. I'm
No.
just someone who is I think positively. So I'll think of the silver lining in that cloud. And that is that leaning into the digital space became very important. During the course of that, of course, we learned so many lessons. We had to learn how to work virtually. I've been in this business for a long time, and I hate to admit how long I've been in it for many years. And I'm someone who went into the office every day,
Yeah.
and I had to learn to deal with the virtual world and to accept that. I had to really focus on how do you build a team in an environment where you're not all in the same place. We're also on 4 continents and 35 countries. How do you build a team that has a single culture during a global pandemic, while you're not face to face? Even if you were in the same country, that would be hard. It's even harder when you're not in the same country. So these are some of the interesting challenges that we had to deal with, but they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I like to think that's what has made BoltTech so strong, is the fact that we lived through that global pandemic period
For sure.
and today are succeeding.
Absolutely. And then the whole tech piece obviously stands out and continues to stand out even now. You mentioned you've been in this space for a very long time. You've held like amazing leadership roles in places like FWD, Forward, AIG, Deloitte, and Touche. Tell us how's your leadership style evolved over the course of time, and what's your style now as a CEO at BoltTech?
So, Vidya, that's a question I think about a lot because I began my career, as you mentioned those company names, at really big firms. So Deloitte and Touche is a big four accounting firm, so it's one of the four largest in the world. AIG almost needs no introduction. It's
Mhm.
one of the most amazing global franchises in the insurance space anywhere in the world. And then even moving here into Asia, FWD in and of itself, while
Yeah.
still a young baby-ish company, baby meaning it's only 10 years old versus 100 years old, it still has many more resources than a little Insurtech startup called BoltTech would have at any point in our existence so far. And so one of the big important things for me has been to really have to learn how to use the team in a really different way. I don't have access to every resource under the sun I might have had in these resource rich established companies, but
Mm.
instead we had to create them. And so that's been one of the big challenges that has really influenced what we do. The other thing about it is you have to create kind of a family atmosphere, a family approach. I know who was employee number one at BoltTech.
Mm.
And that's a really interesting thing. So I've had to create this family. I consider us to broadly be a family, and I'm really proud to be working alongside of so many good friends and people who've been here since the very beginning.
Mm.
Excellent. Yeah. I suppose the speed of decision making also goes through a step change when you talk about these big companies to BoltTech.
Yeah.
Uh, and talking about speed, one thing that has taken the world by storm is how fast everybody has become an expert on generative AI, or so it seems from LinkedIn. And so we can't do an episode on Insurtech without talking about impact of Gen AI and AI. Is it a hype or is it real? Are you using Gen AI in the company or are you planning to use it? We'd love to know.
I love the question, and I always love to answer the question by beginning with this statement. BoltTech itself, because we're so young, we were born as a digital native,
Mm.
and we were born as a technology-driven company. And so we love the idea that technology is really dominating the market and the entire discussion these days, because it's really who we are in our fiber. When it comes to insurance, the concept of artificial intelligence is not new at all. As a matter of fact, even if you want to forget insurance, how many of us use Netflix, or
Mm.
how many of us have bought a goods with really excellent e-commerce players like Amazon?
Mm.
They make a prediction for you. They say customers like you might want to watch this program, or you might want to buy this product, and so they've been using forms of artificial intelligence for a long time. And at BoltTech, we have too, since the very beginning. We use predictive analytics, we use big data. And so the concept of large language models which is really at the core of Chat GPT and the real big buzz in the AI space, is really just the next step in the evolution that we're seeing.
Mm.
What we know for sure is that AI will be the most disruptive influence in the insurance space ever. It impacts every element of the value chain. It impacts the way you deal with your customer. It impacts the way you understand a risk, the way that you underwrite a risk, the
Mm.
way that maybe you process a claim, the way you'll do the servicing. Everything in that value chain can and will be impacted by artificial intelligence. And from our perspective, I think we're believers. I believe that we've been using it from the beginning, but people have started to slowly accept it.
Mm.
And so therefore they almost forget that they're using AI and being influenced by AI every day.
Yeah.
And this is really just the next evolution of it. We are, in fact, inside of BoltTech, built on a very agile culture and a very agile structure where we're adapting and adopting these new capabilities really quickly and all the time. We have established our own, inside of the walls of BoltTech, our own large language model capabilities, where that's not happening outside of, or our discussions are not getting passed outside of the walls of BoltTech. And we have to do that for privacy, for confidentiality, to be very thoughtful about the way that we're managing the data. Long and short of it is, we are big believers the good news is we were born into it this way.
Mm.
And the main comment that I would make to everyone is many people worry, oh my gosh, will my job be taken by AI and these new capabilities? And with a smile, in a very positive way, I'll say, I don't think it's so much that your job will be taken by AI. It is the jobs that will be taken by AI is people who don't learn how to embrace, accept, and use AI. If
Absolutely.
you're going to be someone who fights this the entire way, that might not be a successful path.
Yeah.
But the people who figure out how to use it, I think will be amazingly successful.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that makes you very happy, Ranjit. He's like this major promoter of Gen AI. Rob, when we look at the growth story of BoltTech, it's phenomenal. It's amazing that in such a short period of time, it's become a unicorn. Yesterday, we were at a conference, we were holding panel discussion. Many of the brokers, many of the insurers struggle to launch an embedded proposition because the go to market is very much a struggle. There are a lot of strategic decision that gets involved. Yet, when we look at BoltTech, you have bypassed all of that. What are the key strategic decisions that you have made to get to the stage that BoltTech is in now at this point?
There's no one size fits all way to really respond to that video, but it's a really powerful question and a very one that I think will be at the core of most companies' success or failure if they're not able to do this. I'll say a handful of things. The first thing that I will say is that we began Voltec with a clear mission, vision, and set of values of who we wanted to be, how we wanted to behave, what we were trying to achieve. And I think when I watch other companies sometimes and I see that their direction is dramatically changing from, if you think about driving a car, if you turn the wheel hard to the left and hard to the right, you're driving all over the road.
Mm.
And I think what's important is that you just stay on the road, figure out the right road, and then just stay right. You always are moving side to side. You're always maybe even changing lanes, but move in the same direction. It was very important to set a very clear missions, vision, values for the organization. And I think we did that really powerfully. I said to you earlier that Voltec tries to create and provide products that are tailored and affordable for the consumer, and we're doing that on a B2B basis. That has been true for us from moment one. We also have had this mission to build the world's leading technology-enabled ecosystem for protection and insurance. And you say, oh my gosh, lots of words. But what did we say? The world's leading. We didn't say we wanted to be the largest in Singapore or the largest in the United States or the largest in any one country. We want to be the world's largest, by the way. The Middle East is quite interesting to us as an
Mm.
example,
Right.
just by reference. So we wanted to be the world's leading. We wanted to be technology enabled. We were trying to, so we're a digital native technology led organization, and we wanted to focus on consumers, and we wanted to focus on protection and insurance that is really high quality. Nothing has ever changed in that.
Mm.
So we've done a really good job of setting that and not changing. And otherwise, what are you even creating
Mm.
if you're always changing that? The second thing that I think we did a really good job of doing is we selected a really awesome team. So
Mm.
I've been criticized, if I'm very honest with you, I've been criticized at times for selecting too powerful of a team for my baby little company. And I laugh at that, to be honest with you.
Mm.
I guess it's the benefit of when you get to be experienced. That's what I call myself. There's a gray hair
Yeah.
or two in his head. So I'm going to call myself experienced. When you get to be experienced, you earn maybe the right to listen to what people have to say, but not react to them. And so I had people who would say to me, my goodness, you can't afford that caliber of a CFO.
Mm.
You can't afford that caliber of a chief technology officer. Your
Mm.
chief product officer is too good, too powerful
Mm.
for what it is you do. And my reaction to that is that's all nonsense. If we're aiming to be the world's leading, what should I do? Select a lesser team and then build a world leading and then replace the lesser team with a good team later on in the game? Those things are crazy, but people make comments like this, and they make comments like that because sometimes they think in a single dimensional way. So financially, it might be expensive to put an all-star team on the field. But as we all understand, philosophically, what kind of team do you think you want to play with on the field? I want to play with the all-stars. I want really good people. And so I'd say true to the mission, vision, values, and really good team, even though there's lots of temptation for you to take a different route, stay true to those things and you'll be okay.
So it's a bit of that dogged determination and the focus. And yeah, you're right. If you see the team, I was just now thinking back, they are all stars right there. But you grew into the team, grew into the company, which is now a massive company. And now nobody will criticize you for having that team, right? Because, hey, the company is big. So it's fine.
Ranjan, people will always criticize me, but I love what you just said. As a matter of fact, in this case, the team didn't even grow into the company. The company, we've been able to grow into the team. It's probably the right way to think about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about growth, we touched upon this, the presence in 35 markets this is now 3 years, right? And it's not fun to operate in one market with the regulatory overheads that we insurance guys have to face. Now you're talking about 35 markets. How do you navigate these challenges? What is the focus? What is the balance between risk and compliance versus moving fast? So how do you do that? We'd love to know.
This is a really important puzzle to solve. For being in 35 countries is a real honor and a privilege and a real challenge, all wrapped up into one. First of all, you can tell from my accent that I probably am from the US. And if you said that, you'd be correct.
Yeah.
And yet I live and have lived since the beginning of my journey, actually since 2018, I've lived in Singapore.
Mhm.
And why do I live in Singapore? I live in Singapore because my first market that we wanted to focus on was Asia. And it's really hard to understand the regulatory environment, to understand the people, the culture, the customers, the needs, the products that will solve the problem that the customer needs solved, unless you're actually in the market that you're trying to do this in. And while in theory we could do this from North America, what better place to serve Asia from than from Asia itself? And I have a really interesting statistic here for you, and that is that I have 12 people who are on the executive team of BoltTech. Those 12 people live on 4 different continents and on 8 different countries. And even in the 4 who live, even in some of the ones who live in the same country, I will say, many times they live in different parts of the country. And it has enabled us to, one, attract really good people regardless of where they are in the world, but two, enabled us to have people who are local to whatever market we're talking about and are really empowered to understand they can move in that market as quickly and as efficiently and as thoughtfully as possible. But we are a true Insurtech, which means there's a lot of insurance expertise here and a lot of technology expertise. Our tech is all homegrown, but we have a lot of insurance-y people. I'm one of them. And understanding how these rules work, paying proper respect to the regulators to understand what their needs are and what the rules are, and then building businesses in a compliant way. This is really important to us, and that's why we are so geographically dispersed. And as a result of that, I think we've been able to move faster and build a business that's able to meet the regulatory needs of Asia, which has many different needs, country by country, as well as in Europe, as well as in North America, as well as in Africa, all at the same time.
And US, as people keep telling us, is not just one regulatory body. It's 50 states have 50 insurance regulatory bodies. So there you go. So you can add 50 regulatory bodies to your list of 35 markets. So that's more complexity. Fantastic.
It is.
So the more global you go, the more local you got to become in some sense, isn't it?
Yeah. And many people, I think, tend to forget that lesson. Maybe it's almost like when we were kids, we believed in things and then we later forgot them. Don't forget these lessons because they're never going to go away. This
Right.
concept of thinking globally but acting locally will
Yeah.
never change.
Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, when we speak of the BoltTech, the revenue model itself, in the whole Insurtech ecosystem, there's a whole spectrum of things that each Insurtech tends to solve in the value chain, whether it's claims, deep tech, distribution. BoltTech is obviously on the distribution side of the value chain. Tell us more about the whole revenue generation models you currently have. You have the embedded tech itself, and then you have the insurance exchange. And now, how do they both play in the share of wallet for your business? How do you see these components evolving over course of time, specifically for BoltTech?
Another really deep question here. So I'll try to make some simplifying comments that I hope put it all into context for you. First of all, whenever I have to make a decision of how would I describe BoltTech and say we are something and try to pick a word or two
Right.
words, I probably would choose the words embedded insurance.
Mhm.
And even when we operate as an insurance exchange, and for everyone who doesn't know exactly what that means, it means that we operate like a stock exchange. We match buyers and sellers of insurance, and we do that in a very technology-driven way. It's a technologically enabled matching of a buyer and a seller. And we do that in a huge way. To put this in context, in North America, we quoted north of more than 55 billion US dollars of premium on
Mhm.
behalf of our partners in the past 12 months. Now, when I use that example, I'd say, so we are an insurance exchange. And then you said, Rob, that you would say embedded insurance. I'd say yes. We're actually embedded, that exchange is embedded into someone else's journey.
Mm.
So in the United States, one of the most amazing insurance companies in the country is Progressive Insurance.
Mm.
They spend maybe upwards to $2 billion a year in direct market advertising. You see them on air, the television all the time.
Yeah.
I can tell from your reaction that you recognize that name. And in Progressive, their core competency is as a auto insurer, an automobile insurer. And yet they recognize that they need to probably offer the automobile and the homeowner's insurance as a bundle,
Mm.
and they recognize that they need to do that because of what the competition is doing and because of the way that the US marketplace works.
Yeah.
And so we have embedded our exchange capabilities into Progressive's journey. So
Mm.
when Progressive does an advertisement and a customer comes into the company, they begin the process of answering what kind of insurance are they looking for, homeowners or auto. If you're looking for homeowners, you're actually going through a technology that has been driven by BoltTech. Um, you think of this as the progressive experience, but inside of the progressive experience, embedded inside of the progressive experience, is the BoltTech experience. So we are the secret sauce that is helping, enabling our partner Progressive to offer a product that maybe they didn't want to put on their own balance sheet. So they didn't want to put homeowners insurance, maybe in an example here, on their balance sheet, but they want to put auto insurance on their balance sheet. But they don't want that customer to leave them. They want to keep that customer in their family. And so we operate in that case as a technology platform.
Mm.
We are the technology that connects multiple insurance carriers who are happy to take that risk to Progressive so that Progressive's customer can get an insurance quote for their homeowner's policy at the same time as they're getting a quote for their auto policy, and it gets created as effectively a synthetic bundle. In that case, we're not selling a inexpensive, tiny little insurance product. It's a big, important need in someone's life, homeowner's insurance. And even in that case, what we are doing has been successfully embedded into the journey.
Mm.
If you move to the other side of the world in Asia, We're probably more well known as being embedded into the journey of a customer when they go to buy their cell phone.
Hmm.
You buy your cell phone, maybe from your telco, and when you buy your cell phone, you can also protect your cell phone. And we make that journey very tailored to the customer base of that telco, very affordable, very accessible, and we try to reach millions of customers at a time, not one customer at a time. That's this concept of accelerated access. So when I'm explaining this to you, Vidya, I'm saying that fundamentally, what everything we're doing is really embedded. And
Hmm.
our basic value proposition is to help the customer get access to a tailored, affordable product that they otherwise might not have access to help our distribution partner have a revenue stream they may have never had before, and to retain their customer so the customer doesn't go somewhere else,
Hmm.
and to help the insurance carriers get access to the distribution. And so that's the way we think about it. We are generally paid in one of several different ways, either as a SaaS fee because people use our technology, or where the partner that we're working with isn't licensed. We're also a licensed broker in all of the geographies that we work in. We can not only have the technology, but we can have the licenses and the regulatory expertise to make this happen. We also can do all of the logistics and the servicing of a claim when it's your simple cell phone. And so we have all of those capabilities. But in all cases, really, that's more like a service fee or a revenue share or a commission or a fee. Generally speaking, not as much of a risk bearing underwriting result.
Yeah.
So about 80% of the revenue of BoltTech comes from non-balance sheet related activities where we're really the enabler, the glue. We have a couple balance sheets here in Asia because you need balance sheets at times to be able to help your partners to achieve the things that they want to achieve. But for the most part, we're what we call a balance sheet light, fee-based revenue company.
Hmm.
And we think that maybe that will make us, in the end, far more resilient to the ups and downs of the marketplace when it comes to underwriting results.
Mhm.
Yep,
That's
indeed.
fascinating. I think I was going to ask if how much of this risks do you retain, but I think you answered that. It's so, and there's embedded and insurance exchange goes hand in hand. And I think what you're saying is more of the technology enablement piece rather than the risk carrier
Exactly.
approach. That's good to know. Um,
Yeah.
Perfect. I think stepping back a little bit, looking at the shareholder mix and dynamics there, I think you have a number of heavyweight shareholders. I believe Tokyo Marine, MetLife, Pacific Century, and VCs as well. The mix of shareholders obviously plays a very critical part in catapulting a startup's growth plan and growth trajectory. So, is there a takeaway or a lesson that an insurtech can learn from here? It's good to have number of these incumbents on the board, or is it just good to have VCs? What is your kind of take on it? And obviously, you cannot name names and say anything, but as taking a meta approach, what do you think about the shareholders mix?
Yeah, I again love your line of questioning. This is if I were giving a speech and someone said to me, what's the single most important thing that has driven the success of BoltTech? I'll be very honest with you. The BoltTech rocket ship does not fly without fuel. The
Yeah,
fuel is the capital, and the capital comes from these investors. And so I begin with paying real respect to our investors and saying thank you. We are blessed with a really awesome set of investors. Now, that's where the real important nuance comes in. We began this journey with the support of a core investor, and that core investor has been extremely helpful to us. They have been because they've been very stable. And you know how the market has been for startup companies. It
Mm,
has been really tough.
yeah.
And when you have a stable core investor that made the initial investment that enabled BoltTech to get started, and they've stuck with it, it's
mm,
been so helpful because we had their support. And so I've had the wonderful privilege of working with Pacific Century Group. They've been a really fantastic core investor. And in 2021, we took our first set of investors. They're mostly US investors, and those investors brought for us financial credibility. It was really high caliber private equity, venture capital sort of mindset out of North America, which was really very helpful. But then we were blessed by the fact that we were able to balance that financial investor side with strategic investors with an equally powerful Series B fundraising, $246 million, the largest Series B fundraising round in the history of the world for an Insurtech,
Yeah.
led by Tokyo Marine, joined by MetLife and Leapfrog as examples. And we're so proud of that because this is an awesome balance. And I would love to tell you, by the way, that we are geniuses and that we knew all of this perfectly from day one. I'm going to be very honest and say some of the elements, as sometimes the stars align and it works really well, but we had a great, stable, thoughtful first investor, a large Series A, a large Series B. And so the combination of these three has been spectacular. I have all three of those types of investors sitting on my board. We had a board meeting yesterday. It's a funny thing a little bit because all of the board members have different perspectives and different priorities, etc. But one thing that has been a real blessing is they've all had the priority of making sure that they were building a great company and helping the leadership of that company to succeed. And so it's been a interesting combination. If someone said to me, hey, Rob, you want strategic investors or financial investors, I'd say you might not get your strategics until you get your financials, or you might not get your financial investors until you get good strategics. But the combination of the two is probably something that you should ultimately strive for. Because all strategics with no financial investors, honestly, you won't probably gain the same level of credibility in the marketplace because people will view each of these investor categories as having different skill sets, having different expertise, having different credibility in the marketplace. And so we have been blessed to come up with this mix that's large in all three spots that has been worked really nicely.
Very good.
Fantastic. I think it comes together in such a wonderful way for BoltTech. But switching again to your sort of a leadership piece itself, Rob, obviously with all the successes, there must have been challenges as well. What has been some of the most significant leadership challenges you have faced at BoltTech and how did you overcome them?
The biggest issue when you are a founder, in my view, is that you have to keep moving at a real pace because this opportunity doesn't sit out there forever, and because this team won't stay with you forever unless they can see the promise of why they joined in the first place coming to life. And the very first thing I'd say to you is my leadership style is very much a fast-paced leadership style. That could drive some people crazy. Maybe it drives some of my own leadership team crazy. It probably drives my wife crazy. But I will say that I think it's very important because you can't just have a team that sits idle. We must move, and we must move with pace. And as a result of that, sometimes we'll make a mistake, but I'd rather make small mistakes and move at pace than not move and let caution be the primary driver of the business. So that's one philosophical comment that I make to you. The second thing that I'll say to you is that I began with a team that I have had to continue to evolve over time. So even though I said to you earlier, I think I've developed a amazing all-star team that is at the leadership of BoltTech, myself excluded. I'll talk about the team themselves. But the truth of the matter is that we have had change, and I have had to make change, even with people who I really appreciate, respect, and understand what they've contributed, because of this issue of if you're going to be fast-paced, what it took to get you where you are today, might not be what it's going to take to get you to where you want to be in the future. And you all know that. Every one of us have heard that sentence. The problem is, as the leader, you must live it. And if you don't, you'll hang on to everyone who's been around for a long time, even if it's crystal clear they're not going to be the right person. I am personal friends with everyone who was in this organization that I brought in the first place, who's not with us today, even to this very moment. Because it was not a matter of I didn't appreciate what it took for them to help us get to where we were, but they needed to understand that what it was going to take to get us to where we were going next was just going to be a different recipe. And I think when you treat people with respect and always have that philosophy of, I want to be very respectful of the past, realistic about the present, but optimistic about the future, and always think about what's the team that you need to deliver against that optimism for the future. To me, those are the most important things. And you said this earlier, I didn't begin in insurance as an operator. I was not always a CEO. I was a CFO. I had to figure out at some point in time how to transition from being a finance nerd, a guy who just loved the numbers, to someone who could run the company. And I'd say just never forget that having a core capability is really important, but sometimes you have to let it go. And you must move on even yourself into that next capability. Because if I still wanted to be my own CFO and my own CEO, I would fail. I have a better CFO today. It's a woman CFO. I have a better CFO than I was as a CFO. And you know what? Good.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled. But I would never do that if I hadn't let go of that old role.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, because typically a finance nerd in the insurance sector tends to be risk averse and does not want to change. It's slow to change, and it is a huge leadership advisory here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, moving towards the closing sections of the podcast, I think one thing we can use this is to pick your brains on your diverse experience, and what advice would you give to professionals who are aspiring to lead in the insurtech space? A few words of wisdom there.
Yeah. So I went to university in the United States at a awesome Ivy League school called the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School of Business. And when I went to that school, they taught us in teams. They taught us in groups. And we had a philosophy that we would repeat all the time, which is you have to cooperate to graduate. And it became true. The workload was absolutely unmanageable by yourself. But if you shared it and you cooperated with your teammates, you could each bring the best and teach one another and help one another and succeed. And I'm so glad that I had that experience in my life, because I feel that way in business too. If you don't operate as a team and cooperate with one another, you'll never graduate to become a unicorn or beyond. And it also speaks to the concept of ecosystem. When we talk about this concept of BoltTech being an enabler and working in an ecosystem, we're talking about cooperation. And sometimes, by the way, co-opetition, where we are competitors, but we have to cooperate together. And a great example of that might be, think of our insurance exchange. Everyone could go out and try to build their own insurance exchange, but do you need to? What if you used one that already existed and then you put your own twist on the way you deliver that? Wouldn't that be a better way to spend your time and spend your effort? And so that's the challenge associated with this, that many people feel like if it wasn't my idea and it wasn't born here, it's not good. And that's a real problem.
Yeah, makes sense.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So we've actually come to the very final question. What are your future plans for BoltTech? What are the visions you've got? We've also heard there is an IPO next year. Is there anything that you can tell us about this?
So I start first with your last question. I was asked this recently on an interview at the Singapore FinTech Festival, and the way I respond to that is I say, but first of all, the fuel for our BoltTech rocket ship is in fact capital. So we will always need access to capital. Now, where that capital will come from will depend on what the market's willing to do. It will depend on the valuation of the company. But all of those things are usually out of my control, out of BoltTech's control. The market will decide what the value of the company is. The market will decide whether it would be more suitable for public or private. The market will decide whether it's more strategic or financial. And so as a result of that, I give you back that with a little bit of a cheeky response, a smile, and say, I don't know, but I do know that we'll have more capital in the company as we continue to grow, because we'll need more capital to continue to grow. And I'm proud of that. I'm not afraid of that. The other thing that I would say to you is that when we get capital, we really believe in building some of the most amazing technology out there that will help to advance what we're doing in the insurance space. So you'll see us continue to build technology that makes insurance and protection more readily accessible. And you'll see us continue to make it tailored so that it's actually exactly what you want, Vidya, what you want, Ranjit, and that we make it affordable, so that the solution that we're providing is one that's accessible to everyone, not just to the people who happen to be in a income class where they can, in quotes, afford it.
Yeah. Perfect. That's a very, very good space to get into a little bit of a faster paced section. We have these rapid fire questions where we like to get the insurance leaders to reveal a bit more about their personality themselves. If you're okay, we will ask these questions, and the answers have to be in less than 60 seconds or less. Is that okay, Rob?
That is fine. I'll do my best to make it very quick.
Perfect. Very good. So maybe I'll kick it off and then Vidya can ask.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
all right. So what's the biggest lesson that you've learned in your career?
Move at pace. I think indecisiveness is your enemy. So I tell my team sometimes, you can dent the car, let's not crash it, but don't be afraid to dent the car. You can ride it a little rough, and so move at pace.
Perfect.
One word to describe your leadership style.
Inclusive. I believe in a team.
Brilliant.
Favorite city for business travel?
So you'll think that I'm pandering to you for a moment. I'm going to say I like, in the Middle East, I like Dubai.
Okay.
For many reasons, and here in Southeast Asia, I'm a big fan of Thailand, Bangkok.
Okay, perfect.
Wonderful. So any book or a blog or a podcast or a YouTube video that you would recommend the most?
I know this has been around for a long time, but I would encourage everyone to go back and dust off a copy of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I, in particular, always recite habit number 2, which is to begin with the end in mind. Yeah. I believe so many people get lost in the forest through the trees. Don't forget where you're going. Just like setting a vision, and don't change it. Know where you're going, and then you can get there.
And that's also a great project management tip, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's so not originally my idea, but that's...
No, that's a great one. What would you say is the most exciting tech innovation in insurance?
I think that it's the BoltTech platform. But honestly, I spent 12 years at AIG. I loved my time at AIG, but at that company, I learned what I thought needed to be built. And when I left AIG and came here to create BoltTech, literally what I have been trying to create is the thing that I felt like, boy, if I only had that in my last experience, maybe I could have been more successful. I know it sounds very self-centered, but I'm honestly going to tell you, I think it's the best innovation out there. We should get to know anyone who wants to know it better. Call me.
Yep.
Awesome. Who's the most inspiring entrepreneur for you?
Elon Musk. He's a genius. You might not always agree with how he does something or what he does, but he's amazing.
Yeah. This is a controversial one. Work from home or work from office?
Hybrid. Hybrid. I'm doing our call today from home, but I spent the last 2 days in the office, and I'm so used to a diverse team where I believe in that flexibility. So I like both. And so I know it's a cheating answer, but hybrid.
Perfect.
Okay, so one top priority for BoltTech in 2024.
Our path to profitability. One of the things that I think really separates BoltTech from a lot of others is not only have we got a really fantastic business model and have we demonstrated really good growth, but we've also done that with an eye toward value creation and achieving profitability, which we are very close to. And I think that is something that 2024 is without a doubt got as our number one priority.
Perfect. Very good. And it's in touch with in keeping with the times. And finally, what is the sort of biggest risk you've ever taken?
I'm going to give you a funny one.
Okay.
And the biggest risk that I've ever taken is swimming 2.4 miles in the open ocean in the Ironman World Championship
Okay.
in Kona, Hawaii. And the main reason that's so risky is because I'm a horrible swimmer. So if you ever come watch me swim, you'll understand this guy shouldn't be swimming amongst all of those competitors at that time. So professionally, I would say it might even be moving out here to Asia to begin this BoltTech journey. The truth of the matter is, I never lived in Asia before I came here. I had never done a startup before. And I will say that it has been the most rewarding experience of my life. I'm quite proud of that and super excited about what it has created, but it was very risky.
Perfect. I
What
think,
about Twin City, Singapore is?
yeah, indeed. And that's a beautiful answer to end the podcast on. And it's been wonderful to have you and hear your thoughts, Rob.
Ranjit,
Absolutely.
thank you so much. Vidya, thank you. Really appreciate it. It was
Thank you.
wonderful being with you today.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Very good.
Thank you.